And a new report shows that Minnesota residents ended up paying $70 million for natural wind energy that they didn't even use. The state's wind farms subsidized by green energy mandates. The problem? Well, there wasn't much of a demand, mostly because other forms of energy were cheaper.
During certain parts of the year, west, you got a lot of snow melt sending tons of water down the rivers through the lots of dams on the Columbia River and what have you. At the very same time, the wind is howling in the Columbia River Gorge, so the wind farms are cranking out maximum energy. As it turns out, too much energy for the demand. So last year, the federal agency that manages the power grid shut down the windmills for 38 days. Now, to compensate the wind power generators for their losses, the Bonneville Power Administration is saying that they will pay them up to $50 million a year, a fee that will eventually be paid by ratepayers.
The solution to too much government is not more government. We already require utilities to buy renewable energy. We require the taxpayers to subsidize the production of renewable energy. And now we want ratepayers to pay the renewable energy companies when they lose money.
And that fee will fluctuate between $12 million and $50 million a year, Bill.
So they get paid either way.
Talking about with this green jobs disaster. TerraGen, Bill, is part of this big consortium that got billions of dollars from the federal government, about $2.4 billion in all these government subsidies and supports. TerraGen has created from $468 million in grants, 50 permanent jobs. That's $9 million
a job
per job.
Right.
All right, you're looking live at the president. He is speaking in Boulder City, Nevada. The president is kicking off his energy policy tour over at Copper Mountain Solar One, but not without a little bit of controversy. You see, this plant received roughly $50 million in tax credits, and it currently employs all of 10 people full-time. Republican Congressman Darrell Issa, doing the math, doesn't like the final figures. But Congressman, in the course of those remarks, the president more or less saying, it's time to, continue doubling down on solar. It's very, very promising. Less so oil. What do you think?
Yesterday we had Secretary Chu before our committee, and we had to point out and push for him to officially defund a $1.4 billion program that had failed to meet its stimulus deadline, partially because they were using Solyndra and First Solar assets, if you will, that were no longer available. More importantly, program after program we showed were not innovative, didn't meet the laws passed by an all-Democratic House and Senate, and yet the secretary gave himself an A on the handling of the program.
I saw that.
Then we asked him about gasoline prices that went from $1.80 to $3.80 under his watch. He gave himself an A. The only thing he's done on oil is take credit for what has been done on private lands in spite of his reducing oil exploration on public lands. So he doesn't have the credibility to say, I've done everything I can and the prices have still risen. Just the opposite. He's done everything he could to show that America wouldn't make the investments in oil self-sufficiency. And then he wants to say, but it's not my fault.
Right.
Well, there's no question he has favorites. Remember, cap and trade was something he tried to push through that would have necessarily added a great deal of money, probably over $1 a gallon to the cost at the pump today. It would have added cost to natural gas. It would have added huge cost to home heating and electricity if it was from coal. And as you know, 51% of our electricity comes from coal. This president hates carbon, except the fact is that the American public gets its energy and will for the foreseeable future predominantly from fossil fuels, and he's not doing anything to make sure we have an ample supply to keep the price down.
And climate change is a great example. When I was asked earlier about the issue of coal, under my plan of a cap and trade system, electricity rates would necessarily skyrocket. Even, regardless of what I say about whether coal is good or bad, because I'm capping greenhouse gases, coal-powered plants natural gas, you name whatever the plants were, whatever the industry was, they would have to retrofit their operations. That will cost money. They will pass that money on to consumers.